Mike from Firefly Farms, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Lori. Great to see you, and thanks for having me. Really
Awesome. And,
appreciate it.
you know, it's 2 p.m. On a Monday afternoon as we're taping this. I can't think of a better thing to do at this time than taste your amazing Firefly cheeses with some great wine. So I know this is going to be an awesome afternoon. And I heard you're a fan of this whole daytime wine drinking.
Yes, love day drinking. Yes,
Me
I
too.
joke with people that I only drink on the job, you know. So
Same. That
you
is
own
really
a
a great
cheese
excuse.
company. Yeah, I own a cheese company and a wine and cheese store, so it's good. Yeah, so Firefly has been making cheeses out here in the mountains of Western Maryland for 22 years.
Nice.
My husband and partner, Pablo Solinet, and I started the company. And, go figure. Here we are all these years later. And the cheeses are pretty much distributed nationwide. And we opened about 10 years ago a retail store that originally was co located with our creamery and now is in a separate building down the street and got a liquor license because what goes better with cheese than wine. And so sell our cheeses, of course, but then have two cheese cases with selections of cheeses makers in the United States that we love. And then, of course, some
Nice.
European cheeses that are essential, including, the Roquefort Papillon, which we're going to taste later today. So, yeah,
Yes,
all
and you're
good.
out in Western Maryland. The town is called Accident, but I know it's no accident that you're there.
Yes, yes.
And I think it's really, I'm just getting ready to celebrate my 20th year as the wine coach. I started my business 20 years ago, December 7th. And I think we must have met early on in your
Yeah,
business as well, because you
yeah.
say 22 years. So I think I met you at the St. Michael's Food and Wine Festival, possibly
Yes,
20 years
yes.
ago.
Yeah, yeah.
So I've been a huge fan of Firefly, and I know you are beloved as a cheese brand. I have so many of the people that take my wine classes and do different virtual wine events with me that are huge fans of yours. And I
Thank
need to get
you.
out to Accident because I hear that you can set up that cheese and wine tasting. Everybody raves about the experience. So I love that you've put those two together. And that's what we're going to do today. What
Yeah.
kinds of cheeses are we going to focus on today? Because you had a vision for our tasting.
Yeah, yeah. So Firefly is really committed to artisan cheese making. And in the States, that's not necessarily completely understood. And because we make goat's milk cheeses, the supply of goat's milk is really important. We're only going to manufacture cheese from fresh goat milk. And, for a different podcast, frozen curd is a thing. For your users that are geeky cheese people, you know, investigate frozen curd,
Okay.
right? Anyway, and so historically, traditionally, blue cheeses were holiday cheeses. They were made in the summer or spring when milk was, really abundant and the animals were freshening. And cheesemakers would put those cheeses in the aging room and they would come out at Christmas time. And a lot of it was blue cheese. And so we've got four blue cheeses. We've got the mother of all blue cheeses, in my opinion, the Roquefort, which is the
Yes.
sheep's milk blue from France. And we've got the Papillon brand. We've got a cow's milk blue cheese from my dear friends at Point Reyes Farmstead Creamery, Lynn Stray and her sisters. They are lovely people and they make fantastic cheese. We've got their Bay Blue. We've got a cheese from Jasper Hill, also dear friends, the Brook Blue. It's a gorgeous cow's milk blue that is then packaged in ice wine, cider, and it's just delicious. And then to round things out, we've got Firefly's Black and Blue, which is 100% goat's milk. So we've got a sheep, a cow, a marinated, or what's the word I'm seeking? Washed blue
Okay.
with the cider, and then a goat.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
we also each have brought some wines to the table. And the whole idea, I think, is we wanted to really inspire you, encourage you to, put together a wine and cheese over the holidays or the New Year's. It doesn't have to be super hard. You can pick up these 5 different blues that Mike's going to talk about here, and you can pick up a selection of wines and then mix and match. So we're going to start with, which cheese do you think we should start with?
Let's start with the Point Reyes. We'll finish with
Funny,
the
that's
Roquefort.
the first one I have on my board, so that's perfect.
Perfect.
And what wine, just out of curiosity, let's just say what wine. We're going to start with our white that we each brought to the table. So show me I know you have a Garnacha.
Yeah, I have a Garnacha Blanca, which is from Bodega Tempore in Zaragoza, Spain. And we fell in love with this vintner. They were introduced to us and actually made a trip to Accident. And we had a special wine event where a rep from the bodega was present, Alejandra, and we tasted 4 of their wines, 2 reds and 2 whites. And this Garnacha Blanca was just a standout. It's a gorgeous bottle, and it was awarded at the Berlin, it was a gold medalist at the Berlin competition, which I've been told is the sort of peak of wine competitions, the Berlin competition. So it won in 2023 and I understand why. There's a lot of great wine out there. This one is special for some really great reasons.
Awesome. And I chose something called the Stump Jump. And this is a white that's a blend of Riesling with Viognier, Marsanne, and Roussanne. Those last 3 grapes being Rhone Valley of France grapes. But this is made in Australia, in South Australia, by a winery called D'Arenberg, which I think is making some of the best wines in Australia. And I thought this would be fun because it does have those fun Rhone varietals, but also the Riesling with a little bit of sweetness, and might kind of be a nice counter match for our intensity of the blue. But let's see.
Yeah.
All right. Point
So
Reyes, we'll start
the
there.
Point Reyes is a classic cow's milk blue cheese. Of course, with cheese, you want to, give it a smell. And this is, it's just lovely and piquant, and, there are notes, sweetness. And I believe in breaking rules. I believe in coloring outside of the line. So, generally speaking, you would pair blue cheese with red wine. This Garnacha Blanca that I'm drinking is beautiful with blue cheeses and really balances the fullness in the mouth. So this I'm going to enjoy.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that is so delicious and just kind of melts in your mouth, which I love.
Yum.
Wow.
When we do the pairings at Firefly, I always like to start by saying, wine and cheese pairing is something that's, centuries old. And there are places where, it can be very serious. And I love that seriousness and I love that science, but I also love to not take it so seriously. And so while we, have paired these 3 cheeses and these 3 wines, which is, generally what we do at Firefly, we want you to taste them the way we decided that they would, sing, but then color outside of the lines and try all the cheeses with all the wines. And it really gives people a little bit of freedom and permission, because I find that wine and cheese pairing can be a little stuffy. And one of the things that I always love about you, Laurie, is that you are not.
Oh, thank you, Mike.
Yes,
Well,
you can be my day drinking partner.
Anytime, I know. Even more reason to get over to Accident. So for me, with my D'Arenberg Stump Jump white blend, I was so impressed that, well, one, the creaminess of the cheese just melting, that nice salty blue intensity that you have there. Your mouth is watering. You want to drink something. So luckily I had this white here in the glass. But what's great about it is I took the sip, and after the cheese, it still has so much flavor, so much fruit there. And when you pair a blue with something that can't withstand this cheese, it's going to end up tasting like water, because it just doesn't have the right elements, the right fruit and intensity to stand up. Because blue is one of the, I don't know if I'd say most intense, but one of the more intense cheeses
for sure
that's out there. So you can't just, like you said, that's why we tend to go red, because we know the reds are going to to stand, but this actually did really well. What did you think of your Grenache Blanc? I know you already
The
loved it.
same. Yes,
Yes.
yes. And I've paired this particular wine with blue cheeses in the past and loved it. And it's for a lot of the same reasons. The blue cheese and the Point Reyes is not unique in this. It's piquant and it is red on the tongue in the very same way that saltiness would be red. And so a lot of times people will taste blue cheese and they immediately think salty. And it's not, because there's a lot of salt, in the cheese. It's because
It's the
that
blue.
piquancy, that blue sort of bite. And then, of course, the creaminess of blue cheese, because the particularly cow's milk blues, the milk fat in cow's milk blue is long chain, big fats, and they are ripening, they are protolyzing and lipolyzing, and the
Fancy.
creaminess. Yeah, I'm a cheese geek. Forgive me.
No, I love
The cream, yeah, the creaminess can also have a counterpoint in the acidity of a white wine. So it on the tongue, I think, just works really well together.
Yeah, same. And we're going to list the links on my website. I'll have a page with all the show notes from today's show, and we'll post all the links to these cheeses and the links to what Mike's drinking and what I'm drinking. We got similar, but not exactly
Yeah.
the same. So you can kind of search these things out. And then later, Mike's going to tell you about a very special Christmas cheese collection that you can get your hands on as well. But all right, so we tried the Point Reyes and our white selections. Where should we go from here on our road to blue?
Let's stick with cow and do the second cow's milk blue, the Withersbrook from Jasper Hill. And we'll do this one with the Nebbiolo, but I believe, the white, in my case, the Garnacha Blanca would also do really well with this. So Jasper Hill, Matteo Kaler and his brother and their family of blood and choice up in Vermont are just spectacular cheesemakers and influencers in the world of cheese. Um, Matteo and his son Reed visited us this summer, and we just had a spectacular time, spinning our
Nice.
cheese geek propellers. And the folks at Jasper Hill are just, in my opinion, the real deal. They're committed to farming and caring for the animals and making cheese in the old artisan way. This Withersbrook Blue is it comes in a cube. I've never seen a blue cheese that came in like a 8-inch cube, almost maybe 7-inch, and it's in a bag where there's some of this liquid wine that is packed with it, and the moisture content, of course, is maintained and elevated, and the sweetness of that wine is really something that complements the cheese as well. So we'll do that one
Nice.
next.
So let's real quick show our Nebbiolos. I have a Nebbiolo from Verberti, and mine's, I'm assuming yours is from Piemonte, Italy, in the northwest of Italy.
Mm-hmm.
This is the grape that makes Barolo, Barbaresco, which are the wine of kings and queens and also very pricey. But I love finding most of the great producers will make a Nebbiolo, which is, if you want to think of it as their second label, the affordable version of a Barolo, if you will. And so this is the one that I brought to the table. And often, Mike, if I'm asked, people always want to know what's my favorite wine, which is very difficult to say because that would be like you saying, what's your favorite cheese?
Yeah,
There's just,
yeah.
no, I can't. But, maybe if I was on death row and they said, okay, you can only have one more wine before your time, I believe a Barolo Nebbiolo would be on my list. So I honeymooned there and I've been to Piedmont
Mm.
about 4 times. I absolutely love the region and the wine. So I was so happy when you threw that out. Which one
Yeah.
did you bring to the table?
I've got the M.A. Monticelli Langa Nebbiolo. It's
Love it.
also Piedmontese, of course, and it's just lovely. It's one of my favorite Nebbiolos. And the other thing that, I think your listeners would love, to have us unpack is we've got 3 single varietals here, right? Well,
Yes.
you've got a white blend, but I've got 3 single varietals, 100% Garnacha Blanca, 100% Nebbiolo, and then the third, which we'll get to, is 100% Tannat. And I don't know, lately I've been obsessed with single varietals and understanding the intersection of, varietal, region, and aging. sort of characteristics. And so this is a 100% Nebbiolo Piedmontese, of course, and aged in oak. So
Nice.
it's a beautiful wine. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that, I got mine, I want to say 25. It might have been a little under 25, but it gives you that Barolo feel for half the price of a Barolo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although one of the things, just to kind of make a distinction, and this will be wine geeky, I guess, is that the first wine that I had is a blend, right? I had, the 4 grapes there. So it is a blend of different grape varieties. There are different grape varieties that people grow. But when we make the wine and bottle it as just one grape, we call it a varietal wine. And so my first wine is a blend of grape varieties, whereas my last 2, like you, are varietals. So Nebbiolo on the bottle, Tannat on the bottle when we get to that. And I recently took a class with the Master Somm, and he was saying, no, people say varietal when they mean varieties. So there are different grape varieties, but when we bottle just one grape and we label it by that grape, it makes it a varietal.
Yes.
That's our distinction. All right,
Great.
let's get back to the Witherspoon.
The Withersbrook, yes. And
Withersbrook.
yes, and it's, again, gorgeous. The other thing that makes this cheese notable is it's raw milk, and it's the Eden ice cider. I always say wine, but it's actually an ice cider that it's aged in. And you can, I think, Laurie, really, yes, isn't that spectacular?
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
Now taste it with the Nebbiolo.
That's like an explosion in your mouth. It's so intense. I love that. But I get that sweetness you're talking about too.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I love most about Nebbiolo, and I say this as a big red grape lover, Nebbiolo is, it drinks more like a Pinot Noir or a Cinsault. It's a little bit lighter, and yet it has all of that sort of fruitiness and aroma that big reds have. It's just, I don't know, it's almost cleansing. It's a nice sort of midway. Yeah. It's a great midway step between the whites that we tried and the Tannat, which we'll finish with, right? It's sort of stepping towards that.
It fools you, I tell people, because look how, you can't see great here, but one of my things is I always look to see if I can see my fingers through the glass, which I can.
Yeah.
So that makes you think, oh, this is going to be kind of a light, Pinot Noir-y kind of thing. And it does have that elegance on the palate, but it has tannin too on the back end, right?
Yeah.
And that's that dry astringency you get from reds that binds great with animal proteins, which of course are in all our cheeses. And so it is so elegant. It's not a clobber you over the head red. So this is a nice way to, if you're like, oh, I've done some light reds, but I don't like Cab or I don't like Petite Syrah. Try the Nebbiolo, because it really does have that elegance. I love that you bring that out. And funny you say Pinot Noir, because they often call Piedmont the Burgundy of Italy, because it has so many different little vineyards and each has its own characteristic, just like Burgundy, even though totally different grapes. So I love that too. Yeah, that is an incredible cheese and an incredible pairing. Really important, and I think you might know this from any of my tastings, but we always taste the wine first and then taste the food pairing and then taste the wine again, so that you can, it's kind of like an experiment, right? You have to know what it is before you change something, and then you got to see how it is after you introduce that new element. And this really has the guts, the gusto, if you will, to stand up to that cheese. And that's always, I call it a wine sandwich is what I call it. But that, wine, cheese, wine is how I do it.
Well, and I'm laughing because we're the cheesemakers. So when we do it, it's cheese, wine, cheese.
Oh, see, there you go. There you go. Okay. And that's funny. I don't know if you know, but my husband's a chef, and we do have that argument, like, wine improves the taste of the food, and he says food improves the taste of the wine. Okay, whatever. They're better together is in the end the most important thing. Wow. Okay. The port, just remind me, and you may have already said, the Point Reyes we tasted first. What was the origin of that?
That's California, and it's
Okay.
cow's milk. And I believe, I should know
So
this off the top of my head, but I believe it's also raw milk.
okay, so we went to California, Vermont, and then of course we're drinking Spain, Australia, Italy. So we're all over the world as far as our cheeses. And I love that you're, introducing and promoting some of your colleagues and peers along with your great cheeses as well. So it's fun in that way. And if people order from you, can they order these other cheeses or just your cheeses? But if they come to your shop, they can taste these other cheeses.
If they come to our shop, they can buy and taste these other cheeses. We will include other cheeses in our cheese club. There's a monthly
Okay.
cheese club, and we'll, of course, include a Firefly cheese, but we'll also include two other cheeses, and we pick
Great.
from among our favorites. And we'll curate some other sort of sampler boxes that have other cheeses. But both Jasper Hill and Point Reyes have very evolved websites, and you can go there and order as well. Support our friends. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So we're halfway through our cheese selection. So where should we go now?
Yeah, so we're going to go to the black and blue now, which is the Firefly
Okay.
Farms cheese, and it's goat milk. We're going to leave the mama of goat blue, excuse me, of blue cheeses to the end.
We're
So
going to
the
taste
black
this
and
one with our Nebbiolo, and then we'll save our
yes,
Tannat for our last selection.
for
Uh,
the
yeah.
big Roquefort. Yeah.
Hmm.
So I don't know if your listeners know this, but there aren't very many 100% goat's milk blue cheeses in the world. And Firefly makes one of them, and I've not done the scoreboard on this, but possibly one of the most awarded. Black and
Congrats.
blue. Yeah, thank you. And it's making a blue cheese from goat's milk is altogether different exercise. It's a lot more nuanced because of the very different fat characteristic in goat's milk. Goat's milk cheeses are, generally speaking, easier for your body to process, less artery clogging. The fats are short
Mm.
chain versus long chain, so good for the ticker. And a lot of folks that can't tolerate cows or sheep's milk cheeses eat goat's milk cheeses because they are less likely to trigger allergic reactions. So yeah.
And is
So
that why you started and focused on goat's milk cheeses? What I know you told us that is the focus, but what
yeah.
made you say that's it? I'm just doing goat's milk.
So the health really wasn't a reason. It became more of a reason as the company matured and as, sort of nutritional awareness and dietary restrictions started to really, become a thing. We chose goat's milk cheeses because at the time there was this huge hole. Like, in Vermont, there was Vermont Butter and Cheese, now Vermont Creamery, who was doing goat's milk cheeses. To our west, there was Judy Shad at Capriole. Further west, there was Mary Keene at Cypress Grove. And then some, very small, almost micro local goat's milk cheeses, and nothing to our south at the time. And we thought, hey, this is a market gap. Let's fill it. So,
Great. Okay, so black and blue. What I get the
yeah.
blue part. What's the black part?
So originally it was covered in black wax. And we lost that over the years because it was so much labor and it ended up creating other difficulties in the cheese. So we lost the black wax and we left it. And we like to joke that, it's black and blue because it packs a punch. So,
Oh, all right. Let's do it. Mm, so different, but
right.
amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, because you think blue cheese is blue cheese, right? But
Yeah.
each one of these has had such a different characteristic. How would you describe the difference in your goat's milk blue versus some of the cow's milk ones we've already tried or people may have tried?
So goat's milk blues, because of that difference in fat, are it takes a lot more work to get to that creaminess.
Mm.
So the Point Reyes blue that we tasted first is aged for at least 90 days, 3 months, right? And so when we first started making black and blue, we were releasing it at 90 days. And learned, and I'll shortcut this because, this isn't a podcast about cheese making black and blue. We, did some sensory testing and tasted black and blue at 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, 9 months. And as a team, we were all just amazed at, there was like this moment that happened, somewhere between 5 and 6 months, where the tactile, the feel of the cheese in your mouth, and the development of the sweetness, that sort of caramel note that finishes, just all of a sudden happened. And so we changed our standard of identity, and we now don't release the black and blue until it's at least 6 months old. So,
that's an investment too, right?
It sure is.
It's
yeah.
like winemakers, they make wine and then have to age it. And especially in Spain with a lot of the like Reserva wines, or Italy, the Reservas, they'll age them for 3 years and 5 years before they can even release. So they have all this capital, all of this tied up in
Yes.
these wines, but they're holding them back so that when we get them, they're ready at their peak, and so thank you for that.
Yeah.
That's
And
really
that,
lovely.
the other thing that I'll say is there's a short chain fatty acid in goat's milk called caprioc acid, capra or caprioc. The prefix for goat is cap, right? And as it, degrades, as the fatty acid is through this lipolysis that I, threw out at you before, it creates flavor. And that, sort of, oh, I'm tasting goat cheese flavor is the maturation, the breakdown of those fatty acids. And because our farmers are so close and we're processing the milk within 24 hours, that, sort of goatiness or umami or earthiness is not super pronounced, but it's there. And Firefly fans love that, right? Because it's goaty, but not too goaty. And we've sort of, we've sort of become famous as goat cheese makers that make not too goaty goat cheese. So we're,
I love it.
Yeah.
Nice tagline, but it's a mouthful. It's a mouthful.
Yes, exactly.
All right, so we have one more goat cheese and one more wine. So we both have the same wine this time, which is really awesome.
Yeah.
And Mike, which is so funny about this, a little while back on the show, I brought to the table one of my favorite white wines, which is from Bodega Garzon. It's their Albarino, which I'm also a huge fan of as well. And this is a Tannat, which is a red grape. It's from Uruguay. And tell me a little bit about how you have the same, how you fell in love with this. As far as red wine goes, Tannat is named after that tannin factor that I talked about earlier. That's that dry astringency. But the nice thing about tannin in reds is it's an antioxidant and it fights free radicals. So a little red wine, good for your heart. Tannat is very high in those qualities. So what made you fall in love with this wine?
Well, out at Deep Creek at the store, we have some wonderful customers. We love our customers. And one of my loyal wine customers mentioned to me sort of offhandedly this spring, have you heard of Tannat? And I said, no, tell me more about it. And she had recently been to Argentina and had been introduced to Tannat. And, she wanted me to see if I could find a Tannat and put it on the shelf. And I thought, okay, well, let me find out. And so I went on this little search and discovered the Garzon Tannat as well as the Albarino. The Albarino is actually on our pairing table this month. Love it. Love both of them. Have investigated the vineyard and drank the Tannat, the Garzon, and just absolutely fell in love with it. I mean, of course, it helped that when I was tasting it for the first time, it was, the middle of the summer and we were grilling meats. And, I'm married to an Argentine, so grilled meat is a, almost daily thing. And this, this wine just sings with, charred red meat proteins as well as other things. So loved it.
Yeah, and you really feel that tannin, but it's elegant. It's not like but you feel that just all of your mouth, just the dry, sort of dryness. And the idea of tannin is that it binds with animal protein. So now when we take this bite of our last blue and we have that and go back to the wine is cleansing our mouth of the fat. And so that when you take the next bite of your blue cheese, it's just as luscious as before, because that tannin kind of cleanse your palate. Now you're ready for the next. And so I love that you chose that. And I think it is a grape that not a lot of people know about and can be really fun. And I have a saying, if you can't pronounce it, you should be drinking it. Just meaning like the weird stuff is where the values are, where the fun is, because, what fun is it to drink Cabernet Sauvignon every day of your life? Just go out and try new things. And so I love that you brought that to the table. And what about our fourth cheese here?
The fourth cheese is sheep's milk.
Okay.
And is from France. It's Roquefort, right? Roquefort.
Yep.
And the maker is Papillon. And, Roquefort is, I don't know how old it is. My guess is it's, several hundred years, if not, close to a millennium, right? I mean, the French learned cheese making. All of my French friends out there, please cover your ears. The Romans were the first ones that really, brought cheese making technique as we know it into France and the Iberian Peninsula. And the caves in Roquefort, where, this blue mold Penicillium roqueforti is native, created this beautiful cheese. And so sheep's milk has twice the fat as cow's milk and goat's milk. And cow and goat milk have about the same amount of fat, but it's very different, short chain versus long chain. So sheep's milk starts with double the amount of fat, and it's big, long chain fatty acids like you find in cow's milk. So it just gets creamy, melt in your mouth. And Roquefort is just, in any language, one of my favorite cheeses.
All right, let's taste it. Oh, wow. Intense. And that makes sense now because we're moving to the more intense wine of the three that we've been tasting. And that's kind of a little shorthand pairing tip. The bigger the food, the bigger the wine is kind of.
I could eat blue cheese and drink wine all afternoon.
I know. That almost tastes the same as it did before the cheese. That's how amazing that Tannat is. It keeps all of its qualities. It's probably, perception, because nothing changes when you have the wine and cheese together. It's just your perception is what on the palate that changes. But that is a delicious pairing. And like we said, you could go back and do the black and blue with the Tannat, and that's also going to be great. The Nebbiolo with any of these four, as well as your Garnacha Blanc, my Rhone blend there. And
for sure,
if you're into dessert wines, a Sauterne and blue cheese is kind of a classic pairing that a lot of people talk about. It is, of course, a sweet wine made from another, fungus or noble rot, but rot on the grapes that kind of really concentrates their sugar and makes the wine sweet. So that would be a different way. When we would travel in Australia, everybody wants a dessert course, but they always offered a cheese course, which I really appreciated because I'm not big on sweets, but I love cheese. So I would always do the cheese course over a piece of pie or cake or whatever. And so that's
me too.
A fun way. Drink your sweet and eat, your amazing cheeses. Yeah. So there's another idea for your little get-togethers if you have sweet wine lovers.
Yeah. Yeah. The Roquefort, I found I think the Garzon Tannat has a little bit of spiciness almost, and almost smokiness, quite like smoke as in barbecue smoke, but I don't know, almost like fresh tobacco. Just just beautiful.
Like the color on that Tannat is incredible. Well, Mike, we could sit here and do this for hours because it's just so much fun and you're such a wealth of knowledge about cheese. And I think this has been great. I think hopefully we've inspired some blue cheese and wine pairing parties. If people want to go to your website, buy your cheeses, where do they go? And then do you have anything special for the holidays that we should check out?
Yes. So folks can go to fireflyfarms.com. fireflyfarms.com/shop, or just go to fireflyfarms.com and click the shop online link. All of the cheeses are available there a la carte, and we have a couple of samplers that are curated, little collections with crackers and jams and such. And for Christmas, we have curated a Christmas sampler, which is a great gift and a great, sort of thing to order and have as a party that's ready to go. So
Yes.
you don't have to
Save
worry
us the
about doing the
work, Mike.
shopping.
Save us the work.
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. And then of course I want to encourage folks to get out to Accident, Maryland and visit you out there as well when they can. Mike, thank you so much for coming on The Sipping Point. I always learn so much from you and it's always so much fun. And I hope you will come back again because I know there's so many more cheeses we can talk about.
Cheers. Will do.
Cheers.